Hello, I'm Robert Martinez, State Historian of New Mexico. This is going to be a special episode about La Leyenda Negra, the Black Legend of Spain. I think this is a good time to discuss this legend because it's something that really informs many of the issues we're dealing with in our society now and some of the tensions as well. When I was a student at the University of New Mexico in the mid 1990s, one of my professors recommended that I read Philip Wayne Powell's Tree of Hate. It's a really good book that helps to explain and explore the tense relationships between the United States and the Hispanic world in the 20th century. In order to do that, you have to learn about the Leyenda Negra, the Black Legend. It all starts back in the 1400s with the invention of the Gutenberg press. That press revolutionized everything, really. It helped spread the Bible around Europe, but it also helped spread propaganda. And in the 1500s, when you had that major split in the Catholic Church, starting with Martin Luther's 99 Thesis in Germany, and then spreading all over Northern Europe, what developed was a war of words, a war of propaganda between Catholics and Protestants. So what you start to see happening is all kinds of vile and not so nice things being written on both sides. You see it with Martin Luther attacking the church. You see it with the Catholics attacking Martin Luther. One of the interesting things about this is that Spain is seen as a great defender of the Catholic Church because she was. In the 1500s, Spain became known as the most Catholic, sometimes even challenging the Pope in Rome when the Catholic Spaniards felt that the Pope was not being Catholic enough. So what happens in this battle of propaganda is that Spain becomes a target of attack. So this is where we start getting a lot of ideas that have been passed down to us through the centuries about Spaniards specifically and Hispanic people generally. The Black Legend goes something like this. Spanish Catholics are fanatical, they're closed-minded, they're not open to other ideas or new progressive thought processes. They're gold thirsty. They're bloodthirsty. They are lazy. They have the blood of Moors and Jews running in their veins. So this is the sort of thing that starts to be spread in the 1500s by, again, Protestants. People like William of Orange in the Low Countries had some very, very negative things to say about Spain. And Henry VIII, once he broke away from the Catholic Church, also went on the attack against Spanish Catholics and the Spanish people. Again, it was a two-way road. The Catholic Spaniards would have tracts published attacking Protestants, attacking those who went against the Catholic Church and against the Spanish monarchs. So this was an interesting but really devastating situation. Now, let's be clear. Black legends exist between warring factions all the time. When the United States went to war against the Germans in the early 1900s in World War I, all kinds of terrible things were said about Germans in newspapers, movies, propaganda films. And then when we went to war against Germany and Japan during World War II, there was a lot of propaganda. Again, a black legend was created about how terrible those people were because we were at war with them. And again, it went in both directions. However, what's interesting is that once we ended the war with those places and those peoples, those black legends went away. Yet the black legend with Spain never seems to have gone away. there's always been a bit of a prejudice, and it's not just because of the Catholicism of Spain. There's also been this idea that Spain is not really Europe. There was a saying that said Africa begins at the Pyrenees. That meant that the Pyrenees Mountains, which cut Spain off from the rest of Europe, it's up north, up near the Basque Country and up near Catalonia and Barcelona. I've been to the Pyrenees many times. Beautiful countryside, beautiful mountains. But the idea was that Spain wasn't really Europe. Africa begins at the Pyrenees, that the people of Spain, the culture of Spain was European, but also mixed with African peoples, with Jewish people, with Moorish Muslim people, with darker skinned Mediterranean people. There was a racial, racist connotation to that dicho, that saying. So this has always been deeply rooted in Europe. And then when you had the religious wars and economic and political wars between Spain and the other great powers of Europe, such as the Dutch, the French, and the British, it just seemed to get promulgated over and over and over again. And then it goes over into the Americas, where the Spaniard is painted as cruel, bloodthirsty, vicious, again, trying to force the world to be Spanish, which they were essentially trying to do. But so are the British. So are the French. That's where the Black legend, that prejudice comes into play, and where things get a little off track. We need to remember that all the Europeans were expanding their empires into Africa, into the Middle East, and into North and South America, the Caribbean, and into Asia. And they were all using essentially the same tactics. And let's be clear, they felt themselves superior to the peoples they were conquering and colonizing. The Spaniards surely did, so did the Portuguese, so did the French, so did the Dutch, and so did the British. So we have to keep that in mind when we think about that, because it's these attitudes that feed these notions that there's something inherently or genetically wrong with Hispanic people. And these ideas are transferred over to the Americas when we see the conflicts that start between the United States and the Hispanic world in the 1800s. But the first international conflicts the United States had outside of the conflict with Britain during the Wars of Independence were with Hispanic countries. First, the war with Mexico between 1846 and 1849, and then a war with Spain in 1898. I can't help but think that this somehow has been the source, the seeds of certain attitudes about Hispanics in the United States well into the 1900s, and even now in the current time period we're living in. Those Black legends existed then. If you go back and read what happened between the United States and Mexico, the idea that the Mexicans were trying to invade the United States and were trying to take more land that the United States felt Mexico should have. Never mind, the United States had invaded and took Texas and then wanted New Mexico and California. But this was the propaganda that was out there, that the Mexican government was evil, was unfair. And then you see this happening in the 1890s when the United States goes to war with Spain, that the Spaniards are abusing the people of Cuba, the Spaniards are abusing the people in the Philippines, and so therefore the United States has to go to war to save these people from the cruel and vicious Spaniards. This is part of our current situation. I think we still have these attitudes that I hope we can learn about. The Spaniards are no better or no worse than British people or French people when it came to colonizing and conquering. Now, we have to also understand, though, that we shouldn't be caught or trapped into replacing the Leyenda Negra, the black legend, with a white legend. There's this tendency, I think, to try to justify everything that the Spanish did, to try to counterbalance the prejudices of the black legend. For example, by trying to say, well, when the Spaniards conquered, they brought animals and fruit and vegetables that the native peoples never had. That's true. But that doesn't justify enslaving them, taking their lands away from them, or forcing them into an encomienda system, which is servitude. It also didn't justify getting rid of their religion, their language, or their culture. That's why they fought back, the native peoples in New Mexico. They resisted certain aspects of Spanish colonization. It's not a pleasant thing to be on the receiving end of colonization, no matter what benefits come with it. I doubt that the Pueblo people in the 1600s felt that the addition of amazing animals for work and food and fruits and vegetables meant that they were okay having their religion eradicated or their culture. We have to have a balance as to what the Spanish operations were like in the Americas and in Asia and around the world. It's a fantastic history. It's our history. We're part of that history. But the truth, as with all things, lies somewhere in between. I learned that in the 1990s at the University of New Mexico when I was studying history. The black legend, Leyenda Negra, in its purest form, is not the complete truth, and neither is a white legend. We need to look at our history honestly and truthfully, and so should the United States. And there are lessons in history. The United States is an amazing country with an amazing political tradition and history, but it's not perfect. So we have to look at the complete picture, the complete history, so that we don't fall into that trap of creating a black legend of the United States where everything the United States did was bad, but also not replace it with national myths and national legends that say the United States has only done good things and only has good people doing wonderful things. The truth, as I said, is somewhere in between. Thank you for joining me. Hasta luego. Bye.